Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most foundational, visually stunning science fiction narratives ever created, Metropolis. Now, whether you're already deeply familiar with early sci-fi, or you're just looking to understand the actual DNA of modern dystopian storytelling, you're in the exact right place. We're going to unpack the incredibly complex themes of class, technology, and empathy that really drive this timeless story. Imagine a city where the sky is reserved for the rich and the dirt is reserved for the rest. It's a chillingly efficient concept, right? And it pulls us directly into the atmospheric dystopian setting of Metropolis. We're looking at a world built on extreme inequality, where your literal physical elevation dictates your entire existence. Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, A City Divided. So, to really grasp the engine driving this entire narrative, we first have to understand this stark physical and social separation. Up on the surface world, you've got your wealthy industrialists, led by the city's master, John Fredersen. They live among these colossal skyscrapers and basically idle away their time in lush pleasure gardens. This is the only world Fredersen's son, Freder, has ever known, a life of total luxury. But then, directly beneath their feet, is the underground world. Down there, the workers dwell in these dark catacombs, toiling endlessly to operate the massive, incredibly dangerous machines that actually power the glittering city above. The people on top reap absolutely all the benefits, while the people below pay the physical price. Which brings us to Section 2, the Underground Awakening. Now, you might be thinking, a system built on such extreme division is inherently fragile. And you'd be right. Everything changes for our protagonist, Freder, when his perfectly sheltered little bubble is suddenly and irreparably shattered. A young woman named Maria manages to bring a group of workers' children up to the surface just to witness the lifestyle of their rich brothers. She's quickly ushered away, but Freder is instantly fascinated. So breaking all the strict rules of his own society, he secretly descends into the lower levels to find her. And what he finds in the machine halls changes him forever. He actually witnesses a catastrophic explosion of this huge machine that kills and injures a ton of workers right in front of his eyes. The trauma triggers a terrifying hallucination. He envisions the machine not as a piece of technology, but as a temple to Moloch, which is an ancient deity associated with child sacrifice. Freder literally sees the workers being fed into the gaping, fiery maw of the machine to fuel the city's power. The machinery of progress is quite literally consuming human lives. Freder rushes back up to the surface to tell his father about this horrific accident, but he gets a massive wake-up call. His father, the master of the city, reacts with cold, absolute indifference to the tragedy. This apathy is the final straw for Freder. It sparks a full-blown rebellion. His journey into the working class starts rapidly. After discovering some strange maps in the pockets of the dead workers, and then watching his father coldly fire an assistant named Jozapat over the incident, Freder decides he has to take action. He enlists that fired assistant's help and physically descends back into the machine halls. He even secretly takes the place of a worker who just collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Freder isn't an observer anymore. He is actively becoming part of the machine. Let's move on to Section 3, the Robot Doppelganger. Now, what's really interesting here is that while Freder is descending, his father, Fredersen, is up above plotting. He takes those mysterious maps found on the dead workers to the city's most brilliant inventor, Rotwang, to decipher what they mean. But Rotwang is driven by this incredibly tangled, vengeful web of motivations. Back in the day, he was deeply in love with a woman named Hel, who actually left him to marry Fredersen. Years later, tragedy struck, and Hel died giving birth to Freder. Rotwang's grief twisted into this dark obsession. So in the present day, he reveals to Fredersen that he's built a highly advanced robot to resurrect his lost love, Hel. This backstory is absolutely vital because it means the very man Fredersen is trusting harbors a deep, simmering hatred for him and his son. Anyway, Rotwang analyzes the maps and realizes they show a hidden network of catacombs beneath the city. So the two men venture down to investigate and end up eavesdropping on a secret gathering of the workers. Down there, they see Maria, the exact same woman who visited the surface earlier, delivering this powerful sermon. She speaks of a prophecy, a mediator who will soon arrive to bring the working and ruling classes together. Freder, who's secretly hiding in the crowd disguised as a worker, hears this, and it clicks. He immediately realizes this is his destiny. He has to be the mediator. Up on the balcony, Fredersen is terrified of losing his grip on the city, so he forms a pretty sinister three-part plan. Step 1, kidnap Maria. Step 2, give that new robot her exact physical likeness. And Step 3, use this false Maria to discredit the real one, breaking her influence over the workers and stopping any potential uprising in its tracks. But Fredersen is totally blind to Rotwang's real agenda. The inventor secretly plans to use this incredible deception not to help Fredersen, but to utterly destroy Metropolis and kill Freder as payback for the loss of Hell. So the plan goes into motion, and this false Maria, she proves to be an instrument of pure destruction. Fashioned in the real Maria's image, she begins a campaign of absolute mayhem. First, she mesmerizes the wealthy men of the surface at the Yoshiwara Club with this sensuous dancing. And these guys are so blinded by their own lust, they don't even realize they're drooling over a literal machine. Then she descends to the catacombs, but instead of preaching peace like the real Maria, this robotic doppelganger preaches immediate, violent uprising. She whips the workers into a total frenzy, driving both the surface and underground worlds right toward a devastating collision. Let's see how this all builds in Section 4, Chaos and the Flood. The false Maria's violent rhetoric works a little too well, honestly. Pushed way past their breaking point and totally hypnotized by this false prophet, the workers rise up. They completely ignore Freder, who's desperately trying to warn them that she isn't the real Maria, and they storm the machine halls. They violently smash the very machines that keep the whole city functioning. But in their unthinking rage, they make a terrible miscalculation. Destroying those machines triggers a massive flood in the lower levels. Swept up in the hysteria of destruction, they commit a deeply tragic oversight. They entirely forget that their children are still trapped in the rapidly flooding underground. The duality at the heart of this crisis is pretty wild. In the midst of the disaster, the real Maria, who finally manages to escape from Rotwang's house, desperately works with Freder to rescue the trapped children from the floodwaters, saving the innocent. Meanwhile, the false Maria's incitement of a riot leads to just horrific consequences. When the celebrating workers are confronted by their foreman about their abandoned kids, their jubilation turns to absolute horror. Believing they've just drowned their own children, the hysterical mob turns on the false Maria. They capture her and literally burn her at the stake. And it's only as the flames consume her exterior that the terrified crowd and a very horrified Freder see the cold metal robotic frame beneath. The deception is finally revealed. Which brings us to the resolution in Section 5, the final mediation. With the technological deception unmasked and the city teetering on the brink of total collapse, the climax kicks off with the inventor, Rotwang. Having entirely lost control of his creation, Rotwang's mind completely breaks. Suffering from a severe delusion, he hallucinates that the real Maria is actually his lost love, Hell. He chases her through the chaotic streets, all the way to the soaring roof of the city's cathedral. Freder, desperate to save the woman he loves, goes right after them. High above the streets, with Fredersen and the workers watching in suspense from below, Freder and Rotwang engage in a desperate, life-or-death struggle. It ultimately ends with Rotwang losing his footing and falling to his death, ending the threat of his vengeful madness once and for all. And that brings us right back to the prophecy we discussed earlier, the arrival of a mediator. With the children safe, the true villain defeated, and the city's destruction halted, the allegory perfectly resolves itself. Freder realizes his true purpose here. He steps forward to literally act as the bridge between the two fractured halves of Metropolis society. He takes the hand of Grot, the foreman who represents the hands of the workers, and joins it with the hand of his father, Fredersen, representing the head of the city. Freder is the heart, providing the essential empathy that absolutely must exist between the mind that plans and the hands that build. Which leaves us with a pretty profound thought as we wrap up this explainer. Metropolis may be nearly a century old, but consider this. How do the warnings of Metropolis about separating human empathy from industrial progress apply to our modern technological world? When we look at today's rapid advancements in AI, automation, and industrial scale, are we ensuring the heart remains in the process? Or are we at risk of letting the head and the hands operate without it? It's a powerful narrative that reminds us that progress without empathy always comes at a terrible cost. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring.